I'm Ron Patterson with Utah State University Extension in Carbon County. We talked a little bit about harvesting onions and when you tell when to be ready to be harvested. The next step is to cure them before you store them. Curing is a process of getting the onions from this green, semi-green state to a dry state where they are ready for storage. And it takes a little bit of time, and you need to have certain conditions for it to do well. The commercial producers do it on a large scale. Now you can cure your onions in the field. They'll go through and they'll lift them and they'll just kind of leave them in place, and you can semi-cure them in the field, but eventually you need to get them out of the field. The other thing you need to be aware of is if you have a rainy season around here, about harvest time for onions is our monsoon season. And so we really here in the Castle Country area of Utah, the high desert country, we can't store these or cure these onions in the field. We need to put them out of the rain so that they don't get wet. What that does is it just increases the chances of getting fungal diseases, botrytis and whatnot, down through the neck into the onion. So our curing process, we need to protect the onions from the sun a little bit, but more from the rain is the problem. You can lift them and leave them on the ground for a couple of days, but around here we get storms that build up really quickly in the afternoons, and if you're not there ready to pull the onions out, you've got wet onions, and then you run the risk of higher disease problems. So of course, now we talked about when harvesting, you want the tops to be falling over. You're going to have onions with this thick bull neck, and they don't store very well. That neck doesn't tighten down. You want a good tight dry neck when you're storing your onions, and this stays open. So these onions, they taste just fine, but they're the ones that you want to eat immediately, put into your food, freeze them, dehydrate them, whatever it is you want to do. If you can do that, these are just fine. For storage, these big bull neck onions are not the best ones for storage. You want a good tight neck, and when this dries down, it'll be ready to go. Commercial producers have controlled atmosphere structures, buildings that they can control the airflow, control the temperature, and all that kind of stuff. Here at home, we don't have that kind of luxury usually, so we do the best with what we can. The optimum temperature for curing your onions is 75 to 85 degrees. In a controlled atmosphere, they'll have forced air that they will blow through up close to 100 degrees, and it cures the onions down a lot faster. The way we do it takes 2-3 weeks to get them properly cured. So what you need to do is make sure that your onions have airflow through them. I've got this kind of set up here in my shed. It's out of the sunlight. It's not as cool. Well, it's probably about the right temperature. It gets around 85-90 degrees here, and so it's okay. Humidity is probably a little lower than we'd like it to be. You want the humidity to be around 70%. Well, we don't have 70% humidity around here unless it's just barely rained. So that's just something we kind of have to deal with. But you want to spread your onions out. I've got open areas below here that I can set these onions and let them cure down as I get them set up. Now I have also done these under my fruit trees. I put them on pallets, and as long as it doesn't rain, you're fine. So in order to avoid the rain, I put tarps over the top of them to keep the rain off from my onions while they're curing. I put them onto shelves that are open, again putting tarps over the top of them so that we can keep the rain off. The most important part here in the curing process is to let the onions dry and get the skin dried off. What we're looking for, the scales, you're going to lose about 5 to 8% of your onion weight in the curing process. We want these outside scales to dry down. We want the top to totally dry down, and then the roots will dry off too. And at that point, then you can trim the tops off. In our conditions, in the home situation, we want to leave those tops on until they're totally cured. And that will leave less opportunity for the disease organisms to get through the neck into the wet part of the onion. What we're looking for to see that we're totally dried down, I mean, these look fairly dry on the ends and everything, but you want the neck here to be totally dried down. one good way to tell, it's got a nice paper skin around it. We don't want to take that paper skin off. We want a good tight paper skin on there. But when you take it and you kind of rub, if it's not totally cured, it'll slip back and forth. So this one isn't cured. Although it looks pretty dry, it's not cured yet. This one, when you take that and rub it, there's no slippage on that neck. And so that's how you can tell in your onions at home there whether or not they're totally cured down. When you're done curing, or when you think you're done curing, there's a couple things you want to check for. And one of them is check for damages. Here's an onion that has dropped apparently, and it's got some damage here. And although it's cured down at the neck, that's one that we'll want to use up very quickly because it's not going to store very well. So you check for diseased or damaged onions, and then when you get to where they're cured down, trim them off. The roots will usually just kind of break off, or you can trim them off. But you want to trim an inch or two above the bulb, and that neck should bend over. I always make sure I trim beyond that natural bend in the neck. And then for storage, you don't store them in a non-breathable container. The conditions for storage, the best conditions for storage, are 32 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So you want that to be fairly cold. Now if you have a garage that doesn't freeze in the winter time, that's an excellent place to put it. That's where my dad used to store his all the time. If you've got a cold room in your basement or someplace like that, a root cellar is probably, well, it's better than a room in the house. When things get too warm, eventually the onions will start to sprout again. After about 30 to 60 days, if it's warm enough, they'll start to say, hey, it's conditions are right, and they'll sprout. So you want to make sure that you keep those temperatures down below 36 degrees if you can. Root cellar humidity is usually a little bit higher than you like it to be as well, but it's better than a warm room. So a garage would be ideal as long as it doesn't freeze. You get down to about 31 degrees in there, the onions will freeze and the tissues will freeze, and you'll start getting, they'll rot a little bit faster. That tissue will start to seep. But if it's 32 to 36 degrees, onions will do very well in that kind of a storage condition. And your humidity, again, we have pretty dry humidity around here in Utah, so humidity is usually not going to be an issue for the storage part of it. Anyway, so that's how you do the storage. Some things now, we talked about the thick bull necks on the onions. Also, the other onions that will not store well are those onions that have bolted. They've got a seed head that have come up out of them. They do not store well. That neck does not tighten down, so you get disease organisms go through where they have bolted. And so certain onions you want to use up quickly, get them out of the way, and then those that have a good tight neck, get them cured down, get them dried out, and then you can store them in proper conditions. Now to take them from, you want to take them from the warm temperatures down to the storage condition, not fast. You want to do that slowly over a period of time. So actually leaving them in an unheated barn or shed or in the garage, just leaving them in that so that they'll cool down over a long period of time is actually better than trying to cool them down really quickly for our home storage. The sweeter onions don't store quite as long as the more pungent onions. The copra and some of those will store actually quite a long time. The sweeter onions usually not quite so long. The Walla Walla and Spanish Yellow do not store very long at all. If you can get a month out of those, you're actually doing quite well. So we have our onions, we got them curing, and then we'll have onions that we can harvest or use throughout the winter in our culinary purposes. And there's just another way to have fun in your garden.